The humiliation. The mahogany conference table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of Hartwell and Associates' 20th floor boardroom. Marcus Sterling adjusted his Italian silk tie and flashed his trademark smile at the three executives from Meridian Industries seated across from him. This was it, the case that would secure his partnership at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. "Gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the confidence that had made him legendary in courtrooms across the state, "what I'm about to present will revolutionize how you handle your international contracts." Behind him, Zoe Winters sat quietly. In the corner, her fingers wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her gray suit was unremarkable compared to Marcus's $1,000 ensemble. She'd spent 3 months researching every angle of this case, diving deep into obscure international trade laws and precedents that most lawyers wouldn't even know existed. Marcus clicked to the first slide of his presentation. The research was flawless. Zoe's research. Every citation, every legal precedent, every strategic argument had come from her late nights in the law library and her brilliant analytical mind. "As you can see," Marcus continued, gesturing grandly at the projection screen, "I've identified 17 separate vulnerabilities in your current contract structure. Each one represents a potential loss of millions." The Meridian executives leaned forward, impressed. Marcus had their complete attention as he walked through point after point, each one more sophisticated than the last. Zoe watched from her corner, remembering how each breakthrough had felt like solving a complex puzzle, how excited she'd been to share her discoveries with Marcus just 2 weeks ago. "This is exactly what we needed," said Robert Meridian, the company's CEO. "Marcus, this level of preparation is extraordinary. You've clearly put an enormous amount of work into understanding our business." Marcus beamed, soaking up the praise. "Well, gentlemen, thoroughness is what separates the good lawyers from the great ones. I believe in leaving no stone unturned." That's when Zoe's pen snapped in her grip. She looked down at the broken pieces of plastic in her palm, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. The sound was barely audible, but something in her expression shifted. Something cold and calculating that would have made Marcus nervous if he'd bothered to notice. "I have to ask," continued Robert Meridian, "would you be interested in representing us exclusively? We're looking for someone with your level of expertise to handle all our international dealings. The retainer alone would be worth 7 figures. Marcus's eyes lit up. This was beyond his wildest dreams. "I'd be honored to discuss the details with you." As the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up calls, Zoe quietly gathered her notes, the same notes that had formed the foundation of Marcus's presentation. She'd written detailed explanations in the margins, sketched out complex legal theories, and even included suggestions for how to present the information effectively. "Zoe," Marcus called out as the executives filed out of the conference room, "could you clean this up? I have another meeting in 5 minutes. She nodded politely, her smile never wavering. "Of course, Marcus. Congratulations on such a successful presentation." "Thanks," he said, already distracted by his phone. "You know, maybe if you studied how I handled that room, you'd learn something about client relations. Natural talent can't be taught, but observation helps." Zoe's smile widened just a fraction. "Oh, I learned quite a lot today, Marcus. More than you might realize." As Marcus strode out of the conference room, already mentally spending his bonus, Zoe calmly picked up the scattered papers. Her movements were methodical, precise, and there was something unsettling about the way she hummed softly to herself, a sound that would have chilled Marcus to the bone if he'd stayed long enough to hear it. In her mind, wheels were already turning. Plans were forming. Marcus Sterling had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and he didn't even know it yet. The setup. 3 days after the Meridian presentation, Marcus Sterling was riding high. The senior partners had already scheduled a meeting to discuss his promotion, and whispers of his impending partnership filled the office corridors. He strutted through the law firm like a peacock, accepting congratulations and basking in the admiration of junior associates who saw him as their golden ticket to success. Zoe, meanwhile, had become even quieter than usual. She arrived early, stayed late, and threw herself into her work with renewed intensity. To everyone else, she appeared to be the same dedicated researcher she'd always been. But if they'd looked closer, really looked, they might have noticed the predatory patience in her movements like a spider carefully constructing its web. "Zoe, I need you to handle the Morrison files," Marcus announced Monday morning, dropping a stack of documents on her desk without looking up from his phone. "Just basic research, nothing too complicated." "Of course," she replied sweetly. "I'll get right on it." What Marcus didn't see was how Zoe's fingers lingered over his discarded coffee cup, or how she discreetly photographed the login credentials he'd carelessly written on a sticky note attached to his monitor. Small details, insignificant to anyone else, but to Zoe they were tools. That afternoon, Marcus received an email from the IT department about mandatory password updates. The message looked official, complete with the firm's letterhead and standard corporate language about security protocols. He rolled his eyes but complied, choosing a new password and clicking the link to update his information. The email, of course, had come from Zoe. By Wednesday, the first cracks began to show. Marcus arrived at the office to find his computer running, unusually slowly. His calendar application kept crashing, causing him to miss a call with a potential client. When he tried to access the Meridian contract files, half of them seemed corrupted. "Zoe," he barked across the office, "did you back up the Meridian documents like I asked?" "Of course, Marcus," she said, hurrying over with a concerned expression. "Let me check what happened. This is so strange. Everything was working perfectly. Yesterday, she spent 20 minutes at his computer typing furiously and frowning at the screen. To Marcus, she looked like she was troubleshooting. In reality, she was implementing phase 2 of her plan, installing a nearly undetectable program that would randomly corrupt files and slow down his system at the worst possible moments. "I think I've fixed the immediate problem," she said finally. "But you might want to have IT run a full diagnostic. Sometimes these corporate networks get overwhelmed." "Just make sure my files are safe," Marcus grumbled. "I can't afford any mistakes with the Meridian deal." "Don't worry," Zoe smiled. "I'll personally make sure everything is backed up and secure." That evening, after Marcus had left for his usual round of drinks with potential clients, Zoe remained at the office. The cleaning crew nodded to her. They were used to seeing her work late. She waited until the building was nearly empty before making her move. Using Marcus's credentials, she accessed his email account and began her careful work. She didn't delete anything or make obvious changes. Instead, she forwarded his confidential correspondence about the Meridian deal to 3 rival law firms, making it appear as though Marcus was shopping around competitive bids. She CC'd partners at Hartwell and Associates on emails that made Marcus look indecisive and unprofessional. Most cleverly, she scheduled several of his emails to be sent at inappropriate times, like 3 a.m. rants about opposing counsel that would make him look unstable. The genius of her approach was in its subtlety. Each incident could be explained away as a technical glitch, a misunderstanding, or simple bad luck. But together, they would create a pattern of incompetence that would slowly erode the confidence everyone had in Marcus Sterling. By Friday, Marcus was starting to feel the pressure. The partners at Meridian Industries had called twice asking for clarification on mixed messages they'd received. His own senior partners were asking pointed questions about his communication strategy. Even his secretary seemed to be looking at him differently. "Zoe," he said, finding her in the law library surrounded by stacks of case files. "I need you to help me understand what's happening with the Meridian account. Something feels off." She looked up from her research, her expression full of innocent concern. "What do you mean?" "I keep getting calls about emails I don't remember sending, documents that aren't where I left them. It's like someone's sabotaging me." Zoe set down her pen and gave him her full attention. "That sounds terrible, Marcus. You must be under so much stress. Maybe you're just overworked. You've been putting in such long hours since the presentation." "Maybe," he said, but doubt flickered in his eyes. "Tell you what," Zoe offered. "Why don't I help you organize everything? I could create a backup system for all your files, double-check your calendar, maybe even help you review your emails before they go out. I know how important this promotion is to you." Marcus's relief was visible. "Would you?" "God, Zoe, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only person around here I can really trust." As he walked away, Zoe returned her attention to the law book spread before her. But she wasn't researching case law anymore. She was studying the partnership agreements of Hartwell and Associates, learning about the firm's internal politics, and identifying exactly which pressure points would cause Marcus's carefully constructed reputation to crumble. Her phone buzzed, with a text from her law school roommate. "How's the job going?" "Still stuck doing research for jerks?" Zoe typed back quickly. "Actually, things are looking up. I think I'm about to get the recognition I deserve." She deleted the message and went back to her reading, humming that same unsettling tune from the conference room. Marcus Sterling had no idea that his most trusted ally was orchestrating his downfall, one careful move at a time. The unraveling. 2 weeks into what Marcus would later remember as the worst month of his career, everything that could go wrong began to go spectacularly wrong. The Meridian Industries case, his ticket to partnership, was crumbling like a house of cards in a hurricane. It started with Janet Morrison, his star witness for the liability portion of the case. Janet was a former Meridian employee who had intimate knowledge of the company's contract violations. Her testimony was crucial to proving Marcus's case. On Monday morning, she simply vanished. "What do you mean she's gone?" Marcus shouted into his phone, pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. "People don't just disappear." The private investigator he'd hired sounded apologetic. "Her apartment's been cleared out, Mr. Sterling. Neighbors say they saw a moving truck Saturday night. No forwarding address, phone's been disconnected. It's like she never existed." Marcus slammed the phone down, his hands shaking. Across the office. Zoe looked up from her computer with concern etched across her features. "Everything all right?" she asked, rising from her chair. "Janet Morrison's gone missing," Marcus said, running his hands through his hair. "Without her testimony, half my case falls apart." "That's terrible," Zoe said, moving closer. "Did she say anything to you about leaving? Any personal problems?" Marcus shook his head. "Nothing. She was completely committed to testifying. Said she wanted to see Meridian held accountable." What Marcus didn't know was that Janet Morrison was currently enjoying a week-long cruise to the Caribbean, all expenses paid by an anonymous benefactor. The woman had been drowning in credit card debt and medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment, when a lawyer claiming to represent a whistleblower protection fund had approached her with a generous settlement for her courage in coming forward. She jumped at the chance to disappear for a while. The benefactor, of course, was Zoe, using a shell company she'd created months earlier. By Wednesday, Marcus's problems had multiplied. The key financial documents that proved Meridian's contract violations had mysteriously vanished from the firm's supposedly secure database. When Marcus demanded an explanation from IT, they claimed the files had been corrupted by a virus that had somehow targeted only his specific case materials. "This is impossible," Marcus raged during an emergency meeting with the senior partners. "Files don't just disappear from our system. Someone has to be sabotaging me." Richard Hartwell, the firm's founding partner, leaned back in his leather chair with obvious displeasure. "Marcus, I understand you're under pressure, but paranoia isn't going to win this case. What's your backup plan?" "I'm working on it," Marcus said, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "Zoe's helping me reconstruct everything from scratch." Indeed, Zoe had been working tirelessly, staying late every night to help Marcus rebuild his case. She brought him coffee, ordered takeout for their working dinners, and offered encouragement when he seemed ready to break. She was the perfect ally, supportive, brilliant, and completely dedicated to his success. She was also feeding information about his legal strategy directly to the opposing counsel. Every argument Marcus planned to make, every witness he intended Took all, every piece of evidence he hoped to present. All of it found its way to Meridian's defense team through a series of anonymous tips. The company's lawyers seemed to anticipate his every move, having counter-arguments prepared before. Marcus even entered the courtroom. "It's like they're reading my mind," Marcus confided to Zoe during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "Every time I think I've found an angle they haven't considered, they're already 3 steps ahead." "Maybe they have a really good legal team," Zoe suggested, looking up from the files spread across the conference table. "Big corporations like Meridian can afford the best lawyers money can buy." "No, this is different," Marcus insisted. "They know things they shouldn't know, specific details about our case that haven't been filed publicly yet." Zoe frowned thoughtfully. "You don't think someone at the firm could be leaking information, do you?" "God, I hope not," Marcus said. "But I'm starting to wonder who I can trust anymore." "You can trust me," Zoe said quietly, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "I know how hard you've worked for this. I won't let you down." The gesture was so genuine, so full of apparent loyalty, that Marcus felt some of his paranoia ease. Zoe had been his rock throughout this nightmare. If not for her dedication, he would have cracked under the pressure weeks ago. By the following Friday, Marcus's reputation within the firm had taken a serious hit. The partners were asking pointed questions about his competence. Junior associates whispered about his bad luck with knowing smirks. Clients were beginning to request different representation. The final blow came when Marcus discovered that his personal files, including strategy notes and confidential client communications, had been leaked to a legal gossip blog. The post, titled, "Sterling Reputation, How One Lawyer's Arrogance Caught Up With Him," detailed every embarrassing mistake and professional misstep from the past month. Marcus found Zoe in the break room, stirring sugar into her coffee with mechanical precision. "Did you see the blog post?" he asked, his voice hollow. She nodded sympathetically. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. This is horrible. Who would do something like this?" "I don't know," he said, slumping against the counter. "But whoever it is has access to everything. My emails, my files, my private notes. They know things that only someone very close to me would know." For just a moment, something flickered in Zoe's eyes, something cold and satisfied. But it passed so quickly that Marcus, in his exhausted state, missed it entirely. "We'll figure this out," she said, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone in this. I'm here to help, no matter what it takes." As they stood together in the break room, Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for this quiet, brilliant woman who had stood by him when everyone else had begun to doubt. He had no idea that she was the architect of his destruction, carefully orchestrating each disaster with the precision of a master strategist. The trap was almost complete. Soon, Marcus Sterling would learn the true cost of humiliating the wrong person. The revelation. The courtroom was packed on the morning of October 15th. Word had spread throughout the legal community about Marcus Sterling's spectacular fall from grace, and everyone wanted to witness what promised to be either a miraculous comeback or a career-ending disaster. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table, his usually perfect appearance showing cracks, his tie slightly askew, dark circles under his eyes, his hands trembling almost imperceptibly as he shuffled through his notes. Zoe sat in the gallery, having requested permission to observe the trial she had helped prepare. To anyone watching, she appeared nervous on Marcus's behalf, her fingers twisted together in her lap, her eyes following his every movement with apparent concern. "Your Honor," Marcus began his opening statement, his voice carrying none of its usual commanding presence. "What we have here is a clear case of corporate malfeasance." But as he clicked to his first slide, the presentation screen flickered and went black. The courtroom murmured as Marcus frantically pressed buttons on his laptop, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "Technical difficulties, Your Honor," he said, forcing a smile. "If I could have just a moment." Judge Patricia Hendricks looked unimpressed. "Mr. Sterling, this is your show. Please proceed." Marcus abandoned the presentation and continued without visual aids, but his carefully rehearsed opening fell flat. He stumbled over arguments, cited incorrect case law, and, at one Point completely lost his train of thought mid-sentence. The opposing counsel, led by the formidable Victoria Chang, watched with barely concealed satisfaction. When Marcus called his first witness, a forensic accountant who was supposed to testify about Meridian's financial irregularities, the man took the stand and delivered testimony that was the complete opposite of what they had rehearsed. Instead of supporting Marcus's case, he provided evidence that actually strengthened Meridian's position. "I don't understand," Marcus whispered to his paralegal during a brief recess. He was solid during prep. His testimony was exactly what we needed. What Marcus didn't know was that the accountant had received an anonymous package 3 days earlier, containing evidence of his own professional misconduct from a decade ago. Misconduct that could cost him his license if it came to light. The accompanying note had been simple: change your testimony or face the consequences. The afternoon session was even worse. Marcus's key piece of evidence, a damning internal memo from Meridian's executive team, was ruled inadmissible when opposing counsel revealed that it had been obtained through illegal hacking. The prosecution had emails proving that Marcus's team had accessed Meridian servers without authorization. "Your Honor," Victoria Chang announced with theatrical outrage, "the plaintiff's entire case appears to be built on illegally obtained evidence and witness tampering. We move for immediate dismissal." Marcus shot to his feet. "That's absolutely false. I would never." But Judge Hendricks had heard enough. "Mr. Sterling, given the serious allegations of prosecutorial misconduct, I'm ordering a full investigation. This trial is adjourned pending review by the Bar Association." The gavel fell like a death knell. Marcus stood frozen as the courtroom erupted in whispers and the sound of reporters frantically typing on their phones. His career wasn't just over. He was facing potential criminal charges. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself alone, at the plaintiff's table, staring at the scattered remains of his case files. That's when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Tucked between 2 legal briefs was a sticky note in handwriting he recognized, his own handwriting, with login credentials for Meridian's internal network. But he had never written that note. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through his emails looking for something, anything, that might explain what had happened. That's when he found them. Sent messages he had never written, scheduled emails he had never created, correspondence with witnesses he had never contacted. Someone had been using his accounts for weeks. "Marcus." He looked up to see Zoe approaching, her face a mask of sympathy and concern. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "This is terrible. What can I do to help?" Marcus studied her face, really looked at her for the first time in months. There was something in her eyes, something that didn't match the worried expression she wore. "Zoe," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course," she replied, but he noticed how still she had become. "The night before Janet Morrison disappeared, you stayed late to work on her testimony prep. You were the last person to see the files before they were corrupted. You've had access to all my passwords, my calendar, my emails. Marcus, what are you suggesting?" Her voice was steady, but something had shifted in her posture. "I'm not suggesting anything," he said, standing slowly. "I'm asking directly. Did you sabotage my case?" For a long moment, they stared at each other in the empty courtroom. Then something extraordinary happened. Zoe's worried expression melted away like ice in the sun, replaced by something Marcus had never seen before, a smile of pure, cold satisfaction. "Finally," she said, her voice completely different now, stripped of its usual deference. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Though honestly, I expected it to happen sooner. You always did underestimate me." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. It was you. All of it. Every single bit," Zoe confirmed, her tone conversational, almost friendly. "The missing witness, the corrupted files, the leaked information, the hacked evidence. All me. Even that sticky note you're holding, I planted it there about 20 minutes ago." "But why?" Marcus whispered. "I trusted you. I thought we were a team." Zoe laughed, a sound like breaking glass. A team? Marcus, do you remember the Meridian presentation? Do you remember taking 3 months of my research, my analysis, my brilliant legal strategy, and presenting it as your own work? The memory hit him like a physical blow. Zoe, No, she cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. You don't get to explain it away. You humiliated me in front of the entire firm, stole my work, and then had the audacity to suggest I could learn something by watching you perform. Marcus stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. This wasn't the quiet, submissive researcher he had known. This was someone else entirely, someone brilliant, ruthless, and utterly terrifying. You destroyed my entire career, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Zoe said simply. I did, and I enjoyed every minute of it. As she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, Marcus remained frozen in place, finally understanding the magnitude of what had been done to him. He had crossed the wrong person, and now he was paying a price he could never have imagined. The Reckoning. 6 months later, Marcus Sterling sat in a cramped studio apartment above a dry cleaner in Queens, nursing his 3rd cup of instant coffee and staring at a stack of unpaid bills. The New York State Bar Association had suspended his license pending a full investigation into the Meridian case. No law firm would touch him. His name had become synonymous with professional misconduct and spectacular failure. The morning newspaper lay folded on his small kitchen table, and despite knowing it would only make him feel worse, he couldn't resist reading the business section. There, in a prominent sidebar, was a photograph that made his chest tighten with a complex mixture of emotions. Rising star, Zoe Winters named youngest partner in Hartwell and Associates history. The photo showed Zoe standing in the same conference room where Marcus had once humiliated her, but now she commanded the space with quiet confidence. Her hair was styled professionally, she wore an expensive suit that fit her perfectly, and her smile radiated the kind of success that Marcus had once taken for granted. The article detailed her meteoric rise within the firm. After Marcus's downfall, she had stepped forward with a comprehensive analysis of the Meridian case that had salvaged the firm's relationship with the client. Her brilliant legal strategy, the same one Marcus had stolen months earlier, had ultimately saved Hartwell and Associates from a lawsuit and earned them a massive settlement. Ms. Winters has consistently demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking and meticulous preparation that sets great lawyers apart, Richard Hartwell was quoted as saying. She represents the future of this firm. Marcus set down the newspaper and walked to his window, looking out at the bustling Queen Street below. His reflection in the glass showed a man who had aged years in just 6 months. The arrogance that had once defined him had been stripped away, leaving behind something raw and uncertain. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email. See. With trembling fingers, Marcus opened his laptop and found a message from Zoe's new company address. The subject line read, Job Opportunity. Marcus, I hope this message finds you well. I know the past few months have been difficult, and I wanted to reach out with a proposition. As you may have heard, I've recently been made partner at Hartwell and Associates. One of my first initiatives is expanding our research department. I'm looking for someone with experience in complex litigation research, someone who understands the importance of thoroughness, attention to detail, and giving credit where it's due. The position would be entry-level naturally. The salary is $45,000 annually, significantly less than what you're accustomed to, but honest work. You would be reporting directly to me, and I would expect the same level of dedication and professionalism that I once provided to you. I believe in second chances, Marcus. More importantly, I believe in the power of perspective. Sometimes we need to see the world from an entirely different angle to truly understand our place in it. If you're interested, please respond by Friday. I should mention that several other candidates are being considered, so a prompt reply would be appreciated. Best regards, Zoe Winters, Partner Hartwell and Associates. Marcus read the email 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of meaning. On the surface, it was a professional job offer, but underneath it was something else entirely. An invitation to complete his transformation, to understand exactly what he had put Zoe through for all those years. He could picture her now, sitting in what was probably his old office, crafting this message with the same surgical precision she had applied to destroying his career. She was offering him a lifeline, but it came with strings attached. He would be the junior researcher, she would be the boss, he would do the brilliant work, and she would get the credit. The irony was so perfect, it almost made him laugh. For the first time in months, Marcus saw himself clearly. He had been a man who took credit for others' work, who dismissed brilliance when it didn't come with the right pedigree, who had confused arrogance with confidence. Zoe hadn't just destroyed his career. She had held up a mirror and forced him to see who he really was. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for nearly an hour before he began to type. Zoe, thank you for thinking of me for this position. Understand that you have several qualified candidates to choose from, and I'm honored to be considered. I want you to know that I finally understand what I did to you, not just the theft of your work, but the years of dismissal, condescension, and taking your brilliance for granted. There's no excuse for how I treated you, and no apology that could adequately address the harm I caused. If you're willing to give me this chance, I promise you'll have my complete dedication and respect. I know what it's like to have someone else take credit for your work now, and I would never do that to anyone again. I'm ready to learn, Zoe. More than that, I'm ready to earn back whatever small measure of respect I might be capable of deserving. Marcus. He sent the email before he could second-guess himself, then sat back in his chair and waited. 20 minutes later, his phone rang. Hello, Marcus. Zoe's voice was professional but not unkind. Hello, Zoe. Thank you for calling. I've reviewed your response, she said. I have to ask, are you truly prepared for what this position would entail? Working long hours, doing research that others will present, being overlooked for recognition you might deserve? Marcus closed his eyes. Yes, I am. And you understand that I would be your supervisor? That you would report to me, take direction from me, and trust my judgment even when you might disagree? I understand. There was a long pause. When Zoe spoke again, her voice had softened slightly. Marcus, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about revenge anymore. I got my revenge. This is about something else, about whether two people can find a way to work together after everything that's happened. What are you offering me, really? Marcus asked. A chance to be part of something bigger than your ego, she said simply. A chance to do work that matters even if your name isn't on the door. A chance to prove that you've learned something from all of this. Marcus looked around his tiny apartment, then back at the newspaper article about Zoe's success. She had offered him something he never thought he'd receive, not just a job, but a path back to the person he should have been all along. When do I start? He asked. For the first time since that day in the courtroom, Zoe laughed. Not the cold, sharp sound of victory, but something warmer, more human. Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. And Marcus, don't be late. As Marcus hung up the phone, he realized that Zoe Winters had given him the most valuable gift imaginable. She had destroyed everything he thought he wanted and offered him a chance to discover what he actually needed. In the end, her revenge had been perfect, not because it ruined him, but because it saved him. Outside his window, the city hummed, with possibility, and for the first time in months, Marcus Sterling smiled.